things first, the Niners are running out of time to make a decision at quarterback. Should they gamble on Trey Lance's high ceiling? Should the Dallas Cowboys make Dak a very happy man by drafting Kyle Pitts at 10? And time to fire up the GOAT conversation. Can Mahomes ever catch Tom Brady? Good Wednesday morning, everyone. Welcome to First Things First. Jenna Wolfe along with, my girl, Joy Taylor. In for Nick today. We got Brandon, we got Kevin. There she is. Wide awake out there on the West Coast. But Brandon, I'll start with you.
Joy.
Hold on, I got to ask you. How far do you think Mahomes has to go to catch Tom Brady, the GOAT? I'm looking for an actual number here, like 7, like a real
Jenna,
number.
Patrick Mahomes Jr., Patrick Mahomes III, Tom Brady Jr. Nobody will ever catch Tom Brady. Nobody. Ever. No
impossibility.
Chance.
He's going with the old impossibility.
No chance.
All right, everyone, we got to start in Brooklyn, though. The team that once boasted a big 3 is now boasting a partial 2. It's really just a solid 1. Let's face it. James Harden is now out indefinitely after suffering a setback with that hamstring during a rehab session on Monday. KD is already working through a thigh contusion. He's listed as day-to-day. Now this big news that Harden might not be back until the postseason. The injury bug bites Brooklyn yet again. Here's head coach Steve Nash.
We're back to square one. We'll rehabilitate him and get him back whenever we can. And who knows when that'll be, but we'll support James and we'll support our performance team in getting him back and in his best condition as possible, and hopefully that comes sooner than later, but that there's no guarantee. So we just keep chipping away, we keep moving forward, and we hope for a speedy recovery.
All right, so wrap your head around this. James Harden has played more games and minutes with the Rockets this season than he has with KD and Kyrie together in Brooklyn. Those 7 games we keep talking about, it's pretty shocking. Brandon, I'll start with you. At this point, how concerned should Nets fans be? Are you concerned? You're a Nets fan.
What? Good morning, Joy. Good morning. Listen,
Good morning.
I'm glad you're on this show and not Nick Wright, because, we've been having these big conversations all year about the Nets and the big 3. Can they get it done? Or do they have the chemistry continuity needed? Defense, et cetera, like all this stuff. Look, here's the deal, and I'll admit it. I am finally concerned. I'm not only concerned, I'm also frustrated. As a fan, all we want to see is the big 3 together. That's all we want to see. Look, we understand the big picture. We understand the finals and making it to the playoffs, but we want to enjoy the moment right now. The league has never seen 3 of the greatest players, prolific scorers together, like in the moment. That's all we want to see. The playoffs are about adjustments. I called my buddy Justin Zermello, who's a huge trainer, trained KD, trained some of the top guys in the NBA. And he said, B, the problem is when you get to the playoffs, this is a half-court game. You slow it down. These guys got to start communicating. What happens on the defensive side? Now, yes, they went from the bottom of the pack to a mid-tier pack defense, but when you talk about communicating and, hey, go here, go there, and opening up the court, when things break down, where do you go? Like, they don't have that rhythm. And then the biggest thing, Joy, and Wiles, is this, is like, if they've been banged up all year, what information do we have to say that when they do get back, that they won't get banged up in the playoffs? Like, so yes, I am concerned, I am frustrated, because all we want to see is these 3 guys together. And basically what we're talking about is, can an all-star team essentially beat a team? That's what we're talking about now. These guys getting healthy right before the playoffs, coming together and beating the Milwaukee Bucks and beating, the 76ers. Those guys have been together and built in chemistry and continuity. So, Joy, thank you for being on the show, because I feel comfortable being able to say that I'm now concerned and frustrated.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm sure I'm going to be kinder about the Nets than Nick would be, but I'm with you. I'm also very concerned, and for all those reasons you mentioned. Also, while Harden has been very durable throughout his career, he has fizzled out late in playoff games. He doesn't have a great game seven, statistical record. So he's somebody that you want to have full speed, fully healthy, going late into the playoffs, which is what this team is built for. I understand from your perspective, we do obviously want to see the big three for the Nets play together, but this is a team that's built for the postseason. They're not built for regular season awards. They're not concerned about winning MVPs. They're a team that was assembled to win a championship. They are a super team that bought their way into it, or however you want to look at it. I don't look at it that way. I love it. I'm here for all the anarchy, all the storylines, all the drama, but I don't want to see the injuries because we want to see the stars in the playoffs. And to your point, only playing 7 games together, you really can't get that chemistry going. The playoffs is not a place where you want to try and build chemistry because not only are the playoffs about adjustments, you're talking about teams who are game planning for you specifically night after night in 7-game series, and they are going to design their game plan around exploiting what you do the worst. And if you're not healthy, then you don't have that chemistry going. They remind me a lot of the Clippers last year. I fully bought into the Clippers. I have a tendency to like shiny new things. It's a problem. I'm working on it. But I bought into the Clippers last year, and that was a problem with them when you got into the playoffs. They didn't have the chemistry. The one thing I will say about the Nets that I don't feel the same way about the Clippers is I feel like the Nets might have more leadership. Obviously, Kevin Durant is a 2-time champion, 2-time NBA Finals MVP. Kyrie has a ring. We know what Steve Nash brings to the table. And they have a lot of veterans on this team, but none of that can replace on-the-court work and chemistry and being fully healthy. So I'm extremely concerned.
Well, Joy, I am glad that you were here today because you witnessed the rarest of occurrences. Brandon Marshall finally admitting that he was worried about the Nets. And as soon as I saw this news, I said, uh-oh, Brandon, this is going to be the thing that makes Brandon nervous because outside of just being a television star and a businessman and an entrepreneur, he also dabbles in being a part-time doctor / soft tissue expert. And anytime there's a little ankle tweak or a hamstring or a quad, Brandon's like, that's not good. That's not good. In 2014, Jay Cutler tweaked my hamstring and I was out for this many days. And when he comes, I said, that's going to be bad. So here's the reason why I think Brandon is nervous. Because minutes restrictions and championship drives don't mix at all. They don't. We know that Kawhi had that horrible, people got killed Kawhi for load managing with the Raptors. He's load managing. But when you got to the playoffs, Kawhi played 24 games. He played 39 minutes a game. However the Nets come back, they are not going to be 100%, and Steve Nash will still be managing their minutes, and that's going to be a problem for them and probably kill their championship hopes, Jenna.
And also, I don't necessarily trust when they all come back together. I don't trust right now when Kevin Durant is on the court. He's had so many different kinds of injuries, not to the same part of his leg, that I don't trust that he's going to stay healthy. And now you have another setback with James Harden. I don't trust that he's going to be 100% when he gets back. And if I'm being honest, I don't fully trust that Kyrie's all there the rest of the way. So, Brandon, are the Nets, do you think, still title contenders? If it is only going to be 2 of the 3, if it's maybe 1 of the 3, yeah, they're playing great right now and they haven't had all 3, but how much do you trust that they could still win the title if it's 1 or 2 of the big 3?
Listen, I'm not Chris Broussard, and I'm not going to be a fair weather fan and go game to game. Look, I'm concerned. I'm frustrated. But the reality is they're still a title contender. So, yes, they are. Why? Because when you look at KD and James Harden, they played together. They made it to the finals back in OKC. You look at KD and Kyrie's chemistry. It's phenomenal. These guys, all 3 of them, played on the Olympic team and won. Yesterday, nobody's talking about it, but they signed the best point guard in international basketball, Mike James. So these are reasons to believe this is what gives us Brooklyn Nets fans hope. Like, these guys still can get it done. And when they play together, I know it's a small sample size. We're talking about 7 games, 183 minutes. You showed it earlier. They look phenomenal. They look good. But it's not enough to tell us if they can go on an amazing run. And then another thing, and I'm glad Nick's not here to argue me down on this, because he always talk about Steve Nash. He's immature as a coach. Blah, blah, blah. They are in a weak Eastern Conference with a veteran coaching staff. So those are reasons to believe. I absolutely see these guys making it out of the East. Now the question is going to be, can you beat the Clippers, a team? Can you beat the Lakers if they get there? That's the question. You even have the Suns out there. Let's not forget that. And obviously, you know how the guys feel. Oh, we can't talk about the Suns on this show. But absolutely a contender.
All right, just to recap, Brandon thinks they're a title contender. Joy likes shiny new things, and Kevin just is Kevin. I love it. All right, we take a break. We got to talk some NFL draft because we are oh so close. The Cowboys are enamored with Kyle Pitts. Will he be the next dynamic weapon for Dak Prescott heading into this season? Find out next. First things first.
I thought I was going to get a...
Let's move on. Get me off the screen. It's time to play a little drawing a blank. Got to talk about the Dallas Cowboys and their rumored plans to take Kyle Pitts with that 10th pick. Stephen Jones called the tight end a, quote, unique player. Doesn't come around every year. So, Brandon, the Cowboys drafting Kyle Pitts would be blank.
Look, Jenna, the Cowboys are sitting at 10. So if he falls, then that means this would be a steal. Everybody keep talking about this dude going down as the greatest tight end to ever play the game. They're talking about this dude being a potential Hall of Famer. Way too early. Now, we understand 100% injury rate in the National Football League, and there's a lot of adversity, so we got to slow that talk down. But that's what they're talking about with this guy. Now, I don't see him getting past, let's say the Panthers. You got the Miami Dolphins sitting out there. You have the Falcons. Like, I don't see those 3 teams passing on a guy like this. But when you line him up with Amari Cooper, we're talking about Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb going into year 2 with Ezekiel Elliott in a bounce-back year. Oh, this can be dangerous. Why? Because you got Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is the ideal quarterback. He's a guy. He's in rhythm. He understands how to get the ball to his guys. He understands the offense. High football IQ. You keep hearing me talk about that when we talk about the quarterback. That's where it starts. So if you have Dak Prescott leading your team with those 4 guys, this could be a very, very scary offense. And before he went down in, week 5, week 6 of last year, Joy, they were putting up 500 yards on offense. That was ridiculous.
That's why the Cowboys drafting Kyle Pitts would be get your popcorn ready. Kyle Pitts with Jerry Jones in Jerry World. I love that. Now, obviously, as you mentioned, him falling to them at 10 is pretty much an impossibility. So they'd have to trade up to get him, which would be really unprecedented for the amount of space they'd have to move up and the picks they'd have to get up for a tight end. But he's the Chase Young of this year's draft. He's the guy this year outside of Trevor Lawrence that everybody knows is going to work, that he's NFL ready. He has high expectations, as he should. So I love this. You just invested quite a bit of money in your quarterback, if I recall. We talked about his contract for what seemed like an eternity, $40 million. So why not give him a weapon? They have the offense that can use him, as all the pieces that you just mentioned. You invested in your quarterback, and the Cowboys are about making headlines, not winning Super Bowls. So who cares about giving up all those picks and shoring up that defense that gave up the most points in franchise history last year? Who worries about that when you can have a, popcorn-ready offense that wows everybody and then fizzles out in the playoffs, as the Cowboys often do, which I'm here for. I'm here for the headlines and the fun. We know the Cowboys don't build that way. So I'm all in on it. Get Kyle Pitts. He's going to be a sure thing in this year's draft. And him with Dak Prescott is must-watch television.
I love it. I'm going to go with Brooklyn Nets-esque. Yeah, we have a terrible defense, but what if we got more offense? That's why I like Kyle Pitts on this team. Here's the other thing.
That's great.
The Cowboys are a very emotional team. They're always trying to fill sort of historic spots. It's like, Tony Romo is the new Troy Aikman, and Dak is the new Tony Romo. And it's like, oh, do we need a new Emmitt Smith? Like, we got him. Ezekiel Elliott. His first name starts with E. But who's the new Jason Witten? Don't have one. So I think the emotional heartstrings of the void that Jason Witten leaves in the Cowboys universe might make the Cowboys trade up and grab Kyle Pitts, Jenna.
How about that? The Dallas Cowboys, the Brooklyn Nets of the NFL. Incredibly said. Head to Cleveland now, where Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski had this to say about his quarterback, Baker Mayfield. He said, quote, would hope he's much more comfortable in year 2 of this offense. Hey, Brandon, your expectations for our guy Baker this season are blank. Our guy.
Yeah, I'm going to go with GMOY, Game Manager of the Year. Why? Why am I saying that? You know, your first year, I mean, college Heisman, you won the Heisman, you come in, you know, you're Baker Mayfield, you got this big chip on your shoulder. You have a really good first year, rookie campaign, really good. Cleveland, ecstatic. Then your second year, your sophomore year, sophomore slump, like a lot of guys. Now everybody's talking about you threw a lot of picks. What happened? Then your third year, you come back and you light it up. I mean, all year, Nick and I, we were arguing about, you know, if this guy's the real deal. Nick loves you. I didn't, because I didn't believe you could protect the ball. You did that. But when you have a guy like Baker Mayfield who has his chip on his shoulder, is me against the world, you know, this Brett Favre mentality, he's a gunslinger. That's who he is. But when you have Odell coming back, you have Jarvis Landry, you have a top offensive line, you have a top running game, you have Clowney now you're adding there. If they manage him right, now you got those two-headed monsters at the defensive end. Just be a manager. Don't mess it up. I don't need you to get better. I just don't need you to get worse. Just manage the situation. Kevin Stefanski, Joy, did a phenomenal job of putting together an offense that worked for him. They know exactly what he does well. So Baker, don't go into the Heisman mode. Don't go into, I got to go prove that I'm a top 5 quarterback. We don't need that. We just need you to go out there and manage the game, make the right decision. So GMOY.
No, you're right. I love what Kevin Stefanski did this past year, Brandon. That's why my expectations for Baker this season are to win multiple playoff games. As you mentioned, he progressed every year from his rookie year, despite an incredibly dysfunctional situation, which he no longer has. He is the coach of the year. He has an incredible roster, as you just mentioned. So he should win multiple playoff games this year. That's what my expectation for him is. They should win the AFC North. I'm not ignoring the Ravens, but I don't love the Ravens offseason the way that I love the Browns offseason. They filled the holes they needed to fill. We haven't even gotten to the draft yet. They're coming in a very solid situation, a really nice playoff just route of the Steelers. So it's their division, and they should win multiple playoff games this year. This is probably the most talented roster that you're ever going to be able to assemble around Baker, and he's on the clock. You have to pay him very soon. So this is a proven year for Baker.
Yep.
Did Nick send you his notes?
He did
Are you
not.
really talking about Baker Mayfield this way?
This is what he's got to do. What else is there? He's got to win multiple playoff games this year. It's their division. I have no faith in the Steelers, which we'll talk about in a second. I don't love the Ravens offense, and the Burrow is coming back. We don't know what the Bengals are going to be. So, yes, they should win multiple playoff games this year. They have the roster, too. They have one of the most talented rosters in the league. The Chiefs, the Buccaneers, the Browns are right up there. The expectations for the Browns should be very high. Let's not be fooled by how dysfunctional they've been over decades and decades and decades and decades and decades. This is the year that the Browns should step up.
And decades.
And decades.
I agree. I agree, Brandon. Joy is right, Brandon. I think the Browns could go undefeated at home. They've got some weak home opponents. If they steal some wins, they could go undefeated at home. My answer is big road wins. Their road schedule, a little bit rough. They go to Green Bay, to Kansas City, to New England. They could win 2 out of 3 of those games, preferably not against the Patriots, Jenna. So big road wins in Baker's future.
I like how you threw the Patriots in there. Get out of here.
Great team.
Well, you got to factor in that Ohio weather. We didn't factor in the wind of that weather like we did every single home game last year, seemingly. Let's stay in the AFC North. Head to Pittsburgh now. Mike Tomlin, fresh off that 3-year extension. Team president Art Rooney said he's got nothing but confidence in his head coach. So, Brandon, the Steelers' Super Bowl window after the Tomlin extension is blank.
I'm going to be quick here. Joy, you're from Pennsylvania. You're from right outside of Pittsburgh, right?
I'm from Pittsburgh.
I think you are.
Born and raised in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, me too. East Liberty, Larmer Avenue. I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. On draft day, right before the draft in 2006, I was watching the Pittsburgh Steelers take on the Denver Broncos in the AFC Championship with my Pittsburgh Steeler blanket. And then a couple months later, I'm drafted to Denver. I am still bleeding black and yellow. But the reality is, Joy, it's busted. That's what it is. Last year was your opportunity. You start this season off 11-0, and then you lose 5 out of the 6 down the stretch. Until they fix Big Ben, his mindset, then you don't have a chance. I mean, you have another year with him, 2 years. It is busted right now. There's no chance with Big Ben leading the way because he wants to be a gunslinger, not a manager, not a GMOY.
I didn't know you were a fellow Yinzer, Brandon. You've been to Permanis.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
All of the originals.
4-1-2 forever, baby. I love the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. However, the Steelers' championship window with Ben Roethlisberger closed after the Triple B era ended with Le'Veon, Antonio Brown, and Ben Roethlisberger. That's really when they should have won a Super Bowl. Last year, while they had a great season, obviously, a great regular season, they went on that 11-0 run, they don't have a running game. They lost big pieces on the defense. Their offensive line is sketchy, and Ben Roethlisberger had to throw 50 times. He's old. It's over. It's over. So they're just running it back another year with Ben Roethlisberger. As you know, Pittsburgh's a very loyal place, and it's a very well-run organization. I have a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin. He's a Hall of Fame coach, and he's going to get it back on track when Ben Roethlisberger leaves, but the championship window with Ben Roethlisberger is closed.
Okay. Can we just stop the showdown for a second? Because, Joy, I know this is your first show with Brandon, but I just have to be totally honest here. When Brandon's like, when you said the Pittsburgh area code forever, and Brandon said, yep, I agree. Brandon is a fan of half of the teams in the NFL. He like, oh, Brian Daboll and the Bills, my Bills, Ryan Fitzpatrick and Washington football team, my squad. Russ and Seattle, that's my team. He's claiming to be a Patriots fan. You're a Jets fan. You like the Dolphins. You like half the teams in the league. So you
asked me to make predictions when I first got on this show. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Who's going to win an MVP? Those are my predictions. Come on, wow.
Buddy, you got a big heart. It's nothing to run away from. You got a big heart, and there's a lot of football teams in there.
Lean into it, Brandon.
That's right. Speaking of one of Brandon's favorite teams, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My answer is defensive because the Steelers have a great defense. They let in fewer yards than the Bucs. They had fewer rushing yards than the Bucs. And Tampa Bay was able to ride that Bucs defense all the way to the Super Bowl. So I know we want to talk a lot about Big Ben, but as long as the defense is strong, one of Brandon's favorite teams can make a serious Super Bowl run.
My goodness.
Which one? I'm not sure.
Brandon Marshall with 14 different area codes. The only guy in America with that. 14 straight seasons, by the way, without a losing record for the Tomlin-led Steelers. See what they do in the draft next week. Speaking of the draft, let's talk some Trey Lance. Do the Niners need to gamble on his high ceiling with that third pick? Continuing our NFL draft preview next. First things first. 212-917. Welcome back. So the NFL draft now just over a week away, and yet we're still talking about the quarterback shuffle at the top. Todd McShay tossed in a wrinkle yesterday. He said the Niners should draft Trey Lance at 3 over Mac Jones or Justin Fields. Thinks Lance has the highest ceiling after Trevor and Zach Wilson. Look, we all know the knock on Lance. Hasn't played a whole lot of games, just 17 starts in his college career, and just one last season. So we start with you, Brandon. Say you were a general manager. If you're a GM, would you be more excited about Lance's potential or worried about the unknowns?
Yeah, potential all day. When you're the general manager, you're the boss, you're the CEO, you run the whole deal. That means you're going out there, you're building your team, you're building out your staff. So if I am a general manager, then that means I went and got a Sean McVay. I went and got a Kyle Shanahan, a Kevin Stefanski, a coach that I know that's going to take this talent and develop him. We don't do that in the National Football League anymore. We don't even do that in college football anymore. Like, we see the talent. He can make all the throws on the field. He can move. He's mobile. He can get outside the pocket and make plays. He can extend plays. He has the talent. And then from what I'm hearing, all right, is that this kid has the what? The IQ. High football IQ. Go back to his days, they were impressed when he came on campus, and they said, you know, his ability to process quickly was the thing that jumped out to him. So that told me everything. So if this kid has the total package, then that means I have to bring him in a situation where he can have time to develop. I don't know if that's half a year, like Jay Cutler, when Mike Shanahan, Coach Mike Shanahan drafted Jay Cutler in 2006, and we had Jake the Snake Plummer at quarterback. And right around week 7, they said, all right, Jay, you are ready. I don't know if it's a year. We don't know. But you need to have a coach who understands the quarterback position, who understands how to develop guys, because he has the talent. We're talking about the downside. What is the downside? You know, Nick went through these stats a couple of weeks ago where he went through like the last 200 and something quarterbacks, and only like 3 were successful. We're talking about Lamar Jackson, a couple other guys that are still in the National Football League or did something. So I am going with potential here, Joy, because the kid has it. He passed the test, the eye test, and then also he passed the test on the board. From what I'm hearing, this dude has the ability to process, and he understands offense. He understands football.
Yeah, I'm hearing all the same things. He's a high character guy, high IQ guy. What I don't understand about Trey Lance is he has the same amount of starts as Mac Jones. So if we're worried about, you know, what we see on tape, they have the same amount of tape. Now, obviously, we've seen Mac Jones sooner since he played for Alabama last year. But as far as experience goes, people are talking about Mac Jones like he was a sure thing to go to San Francisco. So what's the difference? I also like to, you know, watch, and Trey Lance pops off the screen. He has this element to him of a big play guy. He is a big guy. He is obviously athletic. You can see it. You can see his body type. I'm not a huge Mac Jones fan, mostly because all last year, everyone could only talk about Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. Zach Wilson popped at the end of the season, right. But Mac Jones was the 2nd or 3rd round pick. Now all of a sudden he's jumped everybody, including Justin Fields. So, yeah, if I'm a GM, right, of course I'm more interested in the potential of Trey Lance. He's obviously a very raw talent, but no more raw than Mac Jones, other than he just hasn't played as recently as Mac Jones. So I love what I see in Trey Lance. I love the character things that I'm hearing. I love the IQ things that I'm hearing. And if you're talking about someone like San Francisco, because we're assuming Zach Wilson is going to the Jets, and we know Trevor Lawrence is going #1 overall, Trey Lance isn't going to have to play right away because you have Jimmy Garoppolo. So it's the perfect situation for him to go there. I do think it matters where Trey Lance goes. So if I'm Kyle Shanahan and I am used to dealing with guys who are limited athletically or fragile physically, Trey Lance is somebody that I'm very interested in.
Brandon, do you think that it's fair to question Trey Lance's opponents? Like, I could see somebody, because I love Trey Lance, future Patriot Trey Lance. I hope we trade up and get him.
Right.
But I could see somebody in the war room just like under their breath being like, yeah, he was great against Butler. Like, what? What was that, Brian? What'd you say? He's like, well, Trey Lance played Butler, Delaware, UC Davis, Illinois State. Like, they're just not these powerhouses. And I don't understand the flip side of that argument. Is like, yeah, Mac Jones had to play in the SEC, but he also was surrounded with a bunch of pros. So do you think, like, when you were coming out of college, was that I don't know, how did scouts sort of judge who you went up against? And is it a fair criticism or concern to say, like, yeah, Trey Lance, you know, cooked Butler?
Well, first, the only thing, is fair to criticize is Joy drinking the Kool-Aid that Zach Wilson is going number 2 to the Jets. Like, she's in on this thing. Oh, Joy, Zach Wilson, this isn't done. This isn't a done deal. There's still 9 days or 8 days till the draft, okay? Justin Fields needs to go to the Jets at number 2. So I wanted to say that first. But, Wilds, to your point, to your question, I went to UCF. The University of Central Florida, played against Ball State. I played against Marshall and Central Michigan, Western Michigan, right? And they came in, they said the same things. But good scouts, good organizations know that you got to do your job. You got to believe that the guys that you hired and brought on in the scouting department is going to be able to weed through all the mess, watch the film, go to practice, and see if this guy has it. That's what you need. Put these guys on the board, see if they know football. Because at the end of the day, if you really look at the NFL and you see some of our greatest players, where did they come from? Not everyone. Jerry Rice. Where did Jerry Rice play? Brett Favre. Where did Brett Favre play? So, yes, it's an advantage and it's a plus to be able to be out of, to come from a Power 5 school, but it's about development. Do you know ball? So to your point, Wilds, they should not hold that against them if they know what they're doing. That's lazy scouting. That's what that is. If you go in and say, oh, well, you didn't play against competition. Well, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know football, because there's a lot of greats in sports that come from nothing. So you need to do your job. That's what I would say to those organizations and those scouts. Wilds.
You know that even after the draft, Brandon's going to be like, I still think the Jets are going to take Justin Fields. But let's talk about Trey Lance. I wonder what he thinks about all of this. I mean, we could just ask him. We could ask him Tuesday morning. We could ask him Tuesday morning at 8:30 Eastern.
We got
the
Trey.
North Dakota State quarterback Trey Lance joining First Things First to talk about his journey to the first round of the NFL draft. We cannot wait for that. That will be fun.
Let's go.
All right, let's switch some gears now.
Let's go.
Kevin Wilds has some weird and some wonderful. Does it include Mike Trout and Albert Pujols both going yard yesterday? How about this? Both home runs traveled exactly 446 feet. Pretty wonderful, but not good enough for KW. Wilds, what do you got for us?
Oh, we'll start with Dodgers Mariners. Look, I don't think we're living in the Matrix. Every once in a while you have deja vu and you're like, hold on, am I in a computer simulation? Probably not. But then again, you see a pitch like this and you're like, hold on, is that physically impossible? So congratulations to Kenley Jansen making me think that we're living in a computer simulation. Thanks to shout out to Elon Musk, who also believes that. Moving on, the wonderful. Oh, okay. Angels Rangers, man on third. Joey Gallo's like, okay, you guys are going to shift me? I'll just bunt. Bunt RBI, no play. For the record, Jenna, ban the infield shift. It's something that Theo Epstein has talked about that they're going to give a shot. Ban the infield shift. I'm glad when it fails. Great job, Joey Gallo.
Kevin Wilds, anti-infield shift. Noted. Back to our top story. The injury bug has bit the Brooklyn Nets again. Are they still title contenders with James Harden shelved indefinitely? I hate that word. We discuss next. First things first. Feels so forever.
Shelved?
Back here talking about the latest feud between Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Now, feud might be a little strong, but I don't know, you tell me. Kansas City Royals catcher Salvador Perez lost a bet with Brett Phillips. Had to don the Brady jersey during batting practice, but the jersey didn't do all the talking. Take a listen to Perez as he walked off the field.
Patrick Mahomes, the best.
So the Royals captioned that video with, sometimes words speak louder than actions. Well, obviously Brady, who sees everything, saw it and replied with, nah, I think actions always speak louder than words. Well, Mahomes, who also sees everything, saw that and responded to Brady saying, well, I guess we'll see in 20 years. Gentlemen, we got a lot of ground to cover here, and we got former All-Pro Brian Westbrook with us to break it all down. Brian, you've been involved in a fake feud or two over the years. What do you think it would take for Mahomes to eventually pass Brady as the GOAT?
Well, good morning, Jenna. Good morning, Joey. Good morning, guys. How's it going? I think it's going to be really hard for Patrick Mahomes to be able to catch Tom Brady, especially after this past season and what happened But in order for him to catch him, these three things will have to happen. Number one, longevity. Tom Brady's already played for 21 years. Patrick Mahomes is going to have to go a long way into his career to come close, but I think he will eventually beat his passing numbers as well as his touchdown numbers. Number two, you talk about consistency. And I'm talking about Patrick Mahomes' play has to be at a consistently high level, but also he's going to have a great play around him. You're talking about the talent around him. He's going to have good players there. And I think Andy Reid probably is just as important as far as consistency goes. And number three, he's going to have to get 5. He's going to have to get 5 rings. We already know that Joe Montana and Terry Bradshaw have 4. For Patrick Mahomes to be in the conversation, he has to get 5. He doesn't necessarily have to get 7. And, Brandon, when I think about it, if he could do those 3 things, which are almost impossible to be able to do, I think that's when he enters the conversation of the GOAT. And then we can have the conversation between him and Tom Brady.
Right. Well, first, before we even jump into that conversation, I mean, we really have to look at these tweets. I think we may be overlooking the realness of these tweets. Tom Brady is one of my favorite guys to follow on social media, Instagram after games. He always has some amazing highlights and some amazing stories. It's always phenomenal. Even Twitter, we've seen Tom Brady before actually go back and forth and banter with guys, like good banter. But I don't know if this is banter. Was this orchestrated? Patrick Mahomes just came out and made a tweet. He said what he said. Tom Brady saw it. He responded. And then obviously the rest is history. I think this is something that we really need to pay attention to. But to answer the question, look, there's so much going against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, what Tom Brady has done in his 21 years, 7 Super Bowls, is nothing short of godly. Now, I'm not saying Tom Brady is a god, but this is God's hands all over this boy. For you to play in the National Football League, I don't care at what position, 21 years, that's amazing. I've seen guys in week 8, week 9 literally take tape and tape their arms together, their legs together just to go through warm-ups. Mm-hmm. So for this dude to do it at this level, to do it at this level for this long, it's unbelievable. Joy, you notice your brother played at a high level for a long time. How many times have you seen your brother, Jason Taylor, the great Jason Taylor, Hall of Famer Jason Taylor, tape his body up to get through a season, overcome injuries? We've seen this before. So that's number one, because the injury rate is 100% in the National Football League. After one practice, everybody in the National Football League has something. They're dealing with something. You get through preseason, you're dealing with 2, 3 things. You get through a few weeks, you're dealing with something. When you look at Tom Brady and the other things that Patrick Mahomes have against him, is this dude was in one offense for 20 years. Think about that. And we always talk about that for the quarterback position. That is key, the stability in offense, the philosophy, the terminology, the language, making sure that everything is the same. You take a guy like Jay Cutler. How is this guy so smart, has all the physical tools, but he's not thriving? Because he was in 5, 6 different schemes, and his offensive coordinator was changing year after year. And there's so many other examples. Tom Brady had that. You got Coach Andy Reid. He's just turned 67, 68. How much longer does he have? You're not going to have the same continuity that Tom Brady had. And then when you talk about playmakers, how long are you going to be able to keep these guys around you? Now, obviously, Sammy Watkins, he didn't play much last year. He was banged up, but he played a huge role in their path to the Super Bowl. He made some huge plays. He's not there anymore. He's in Baltimore. So there's so many things that is working against him. Stability in offense, stability in organization, stability with the guys in the locker room who's taking a huddle with you. So I see this never happening, Joy.
Yeah, Brandon, I'm glad that you mentioned God and the blessings on Tom Brady, because I would say it's going to take a miracle for Patrick Mahomes to pass Tom Brady. And that's no disrespect to the talent that Patrick Mahomes is. We all know he's an incredible all-time talent and has the potential to have a legendary career, and maybe the only person to really compete with what Tom Brady has done, although I think we're completely dismissing Joe Montana, who was the GOAT before Tom Brady. So I do think Patrick Mahomes probably has to pass Joe Montana before he starts getting into the Tom Brady territory, but that's neither here nor there. What you mentioned is exactly correct, Brandon. He's going to need some consistency. Let's not be disrespectful to the Death Star. Let's not be disrespectful to what the Patriots did for 20 years.
Let's go.
Yes, Tom Brady just won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay with Bruce Arians, and incredibly impressive. But did we just forget what the Patriots did for the last 20 years, basically winning a Super Bowl on average every 3 years? Forget the talent that cycled through that time. Forget the defenses that Bill Belichick put together. How about just the offensive line? The legendary offensive lines that Tom Brady has had to work with. Also, Tom Brady has taken many pay cuts. For whatever the reason it is, he's taken pay cuts. So he's facilitated bringing in new talents. There's a lot of things that have to fall in place, which is basically a miracle. I think it's unprecedented in all of sports what we saw with the Patriots. It's a little disrespectful to just think you can copy and paste that just because you have an incredible talent like Patrick Mahomes. I know Nick Wright is going to hear this and freak out, but I love Patrick Mahomes. I love what the Chiefs are doing. I just think we get a little crazy with these GOAT conversations. There is a lot that Patrick Mahomes has to accomplish before we start talking about him being compared, let alone passing what Tom Brady is doing. It's a very Jordan LeBron conversation, and really not until like the last 2 years have people really leaned into, okay, LeBron might actually be able to pass what Michael has done. And look what LeBron has had to do to really legitimately be in that conversation. And then Michael just drops The Last Dance and we're like, oh yeah, actually he's still the GOAT. So there is so much, much that Patrick Mahomes would have to do. So many things that would have to fall in place outside of Patrick Mahomes for that to be accomplished. It's not that easy to win Super Bowls. And what the Patriots did is to say it's impressive is not even the right word, but it's a little disrespectful to dismiss what was done there.
You know, Joy, you talked about a miracle. I want to talk about a meeting I would like to have with the football gods. And I'm Brian, I'm going to ask you a question about luck and happenstance. If I had a meeting with the football gods, and I say, Wilds, how are you today? I'm the football god. I say, hello, football god. I say, what would you like? Do you have any wishes? I say, yes, I do. I would like to go undefeated, and I would like the helmet catch never to happen. It seemed like a lucky play, and I felt like we were the better team and we deserved to win. The football gods would say, all right, Wilds, but you have to trade something. You can't just get something for free. I said, I'll trade the Malcolm Butler Super Bowl. I felt like they should have handed the ball to Marshawn Lynch, and Russ deserved to win that one. And that would be the fair deal, and I would be happy, and the Seahawks would be happy. Now, the reason I tell this fictitious story about the football gods is because happenstance and luck and just the way the ball bounces has had a huge, effect on Tom Brady's career, whether it's Adam Vinatieri, whether it's the tuck rule, whether it's Hall of Famer Julian Edelman's, shoestring catch 1 inch off the ground. So, Brian, Hall of Famer Julian Edelman, 2026, everybody, book your tickets, Ken. The whole hotel room's going to be sold out. So, Brian, the question is this. In your career, have you ever looked at something and said, you know what, that was just lucky. And if the ball bounced another way, I could have gotten this record, or I could have been a champion, or I could have done this thing. How much I feel like we underplay happenstance and luck in the careers of football players in general?
Kevin, I've been waiting for someone to ask me this question for such a long time. I remember 04-05 season. We're playing against your Patriots in Jacksonville, Florida. And, we weren't a team that turned the ball over very much that year. We scored a bunch of points and our defense played well all season long. We get to the Super Bowl. I think we had 3 turnovers, maybe even 4 turnovers in the game. We end up losing by 3 points. So we talk about the ball bouncing the other way for the other team. For us, that was that moment where you're saying, you know what, if we just had 1 less turnover, we win that football game. If we had obviously 2 less turnovers, we win that game going away. And now we're talking about maybe not a Patriots dynasty. Maybe we're talking about an Eagles dynasty. And so and Theo doesn't leave the Eagles and all this other stuff doesn't happen. So to me, you talk about happenstance and the ball bouncing the other way, I point directly to that Super Bowl and I say, man, if we had a couple less turnovers, that changed the course of everything. It certainly changed the course of how much money I have in my bank account.
Luck favors the prepared. Luck favors the prepared.
Right.
Especially if you know the plays of the other team.
Tweet it. tweet.
Brian Westbrook, stick around.
Caught Brian's mic.
We got to talk about the NFL draft. Hey, are the 49ers getting ready to gamble on Trey Lance's high ceiling with that third pick? It's next. First things first. Back here, first things first, time for stories to start your morning, sponsored by Modelo, brewed for those with a fighting spirit. Let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets, who once boasted a big 3, now they're boasting a partial 2, and it's really, let's face it, just a solid 1. James Harden is now out indefinitely after suffering a setback with that hamstring during an on-court rehab session on Monday. Now look, KD's already working through a thigh contusion. He's listed as day-to-day. Now Harden might not be back until the postseason. The injury bug bites Brooklyn again. Here's head coach Steve Nash.
We're back to square one. We'll rehabilitate him and get him back whenever we can. And who knows when that'll be, but we'll support James and we'll support our performance team in getting him back and in his best condition as possible, and hopefully that comes sooner than later, but that there's no guarantee. So we just keep chipping away, we keep moving forward, and we hope for a speedy recovery.
It's hard to believe, but James Harden has actually played more games and minutes with the Houston Rockets this season, look at that, than he has with KD and Kyrie in Brooklyn. So, look, Brandon, you're the resident Nets fan on the show. At this point, how concerned are you? How concerned should Nets fans really be?
So, Joy, I don't know how it is on the herd with Colin. He's one of the most dynamic analysts, commentators, speakers out there. Everyone should study this guy. And he has some real black and white points and takes. But when he's wrong, I don't know if he ever comes out and say, you know what, I was wrong, right? But that's what I'm going to do on this show.
Every Monday. We do a whole segment every Monday where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong. So he does admit when he's wrong. Yeah, we do a whole segment.
Okay, well, Nick Wright doesn't do that. Nick, well, every once in a while he'll do it, but we need to do it more on this show, okay? So this is what I'm going to do. I've been driving this one thing home all year when it comes to the Nets. Like, I'm not concerned. I don't care about the 7 games they played together in only 183 minutes. It doesn't matter. They'll find a way. But for the very first time, I will admit, I'm glad Nick isn't on the show today, that I am a bit concerned and frustrated as a fan. Because playoffs are right around the corner. And chemistry and continuity, it really does matter when it comes to a team, right? So I am concerned there. You got to be able to figure out how you're going to communicate when things break down defensively. You got to figure out offensively who's hot and what do we do and how do we get other guys involved. And you got to figure things out. And there's some things you don't figure out, in the locker room, in the film room. You just got to be on the court. So I'm concerned there. I'm also concerned and frustrated because if these guys haven't been able to be healthy throughout the regular season, what's out there for us to believe that they'll be able to sustain the playoffs? So I'm concerned there. But there's hope. And that's what I want to double down on, is because as an athlete and in sports, while you're over there getting giddy, but this is the reality. If you go back and watch Steve Nash's press conference, did you see any panic in him? Did you see Steve Nash just start panicking, or KD or Kyrie or James Harden? Nobody's panicking. In the locker room, you have to find a way, and they are going to find a way. They have already found a way all year, Jenna. They're one game out of the top seed in the East. So when you look at what they have going for themselves, KD and James Harden, they made it to the Western. They made it to the Western Conference finals. They made it to the finals, together back in OKC.
Right.
You got KD and Kyrie. They have amazing chemistry. These 3 played on an Olympic team together and won it. So I truly believe they'll be able to lean into their experience when the playoff time comes. So there is hope around my concern and frustration.
Okay. Joy, do you think Nets fans...
Welcome to the show. Well, I was saying, welcome to the show, Joy. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kevin.
So I would say this. Brandon, no matter what happens to the Nets, Brandon is going to be hopeful. If the NBA passed a rule that the Nets had to play blindfolded, Brandon would be like, I don't know. Michael Jordan could make free throws with his eyes closed. I think the Nets will be okay playing blindfolded while they have such good offense. They'll be great. And they won't get distracted by the other fans in the stands. He's always looking on the bright side. He's an optimistic guy. However, it's one thing to say chemistry's not a concern. It's one thing to say continuity is not a concern. It's another thing to say walking normally and running is not a concern, because it is. And once I saw this news come down that Harden's hamstring, we're back to square one, I said, this is not good. Two things that don't go together, Joy: minutes restrictions and championship drives. And even when Kawhi, who was the king of load management in Toronto, he only played 64 games. When they got to the playoffs, he played 24 games, he played 39 minutes a game. So I do not think the Nets, who are going to have to manage KD's minutes and they're going to have to manage Harden's minutes, even if they are healthy, have a chance to make a real championship run with guys who aren't 100%.
No, I agree. I'm very concerned as well. And the point with Kawhi that everyone is probably not paying attention to is that Toronto had a great culture and system. They were winning the East and they were constantly contenders. They just needed a star to add on to that. I actually picked Toronto to win the championship that year, even with his minutes restriction or load management, whatever you want to call it, because Kawhi is a winner and that's really all they needed. But was Kawhi injured or was he managing a lingering situation? Harden is clearly injured. He's out indefinitely, the word that Jenna doesn't like, and I don't either. So there's big concern with this. They haven't played together. They should be worried. They're going into the playoffs not healthy, and that's not what anybody wants in any sport, really. There's hope. There's always hope, Brandon.
Brandon's got it. Glasses half full. All right, I want to play a quick drawing a blank before we send our way out. Red hot Steph Curry back in action tonight in D.C. against the Wizards. He's averaging over 40 a game in April. Brandon, Chef Curry will score blank points tonight in Washington.
Oh, he doesn't slow down. He heats up even more. We're talking about a team 22nd in defense. He's going to drop 55 tonight. He's going to drop 55.
I'm going 60. Why not? A 60-point night for Steph Curry.
What is this? Price is Right?
I have to be the downer.
Go ahead, Wilds.
I think Russ and Bradley Beal are like, enough of this streak. He's held to 22 points, Jenna.
22. At least it's a little bit more realistic.
22 exactly.
Joy, thank you so much. It was a blast. Hope you had fun. We loved having you. We got to go. Undisputed coming up next. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.